Hi, I'm James McGuire, and on today's eSpeaks, we're talking about open source, about the role of open source in edge computing in the cloud, and we'll also take a look at the future of open source. To discuss that, I'm joined by a very special guest. With me is Paul Cormier, Chief Executive Officer at Red Hat. Paul, thrilled to have you with us today.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks. I really appreciate for you inviting me.
Great. Well, let's talk about Linux and how it has grown over the years. I mean, Red Hat went public in 1999, and I know back then there was some resistance among enterprise buyers. They didn't always understand the open source model. But I read a recent report that said revenue for the total open source industry has now grown to about $30 billion a year and is expected to double by 2027. So why do you think open source has seen such a rapid growth curve?
Easy innovation. I mean,
Mm,
when you talked about, Red Hat going public in the late '90s, and
hmm
but Linux back then was for hobbyists. It was really, in fact, when I first joined Red Hat in early 2001.
hmm.
The biggest thing we had to worry about was getting a release out in October so we could get it on the shelves in the big box stores for Christmas. And it was clearly, it was $29.95 a box, and it was clearly a hobbyist market. I think what we did in Red Hat, we started then, but released in, I think, around 2002 or so, was when we really flipped the model and we really concentrated on the enterprise for Linux. And because, one of the things when they came in, we saw was that a lot of enterprises were trying to use this thing, Linux, that was from us, that was really targeted at the hobbyist market. They were trying to use that and adapt that to their enterprise market with all the requirements that they need. They need stability, they need security, they need lifecycle support, they need security patches on, in the minute they're out, right? And that's when we came out with RHEL, and we literally stopped the hobbyist version, which was very controversial at the time,
Hmm.
and went to RHEL, which was the enterprise version. And I'd like to
hmm
say that I think we had a lot to do with Linux coming to the commercial market, and
hmm
so that's what's grown from there. The reason why Linux has grown so much and will continue to grow is because I think we've proven that the innovation model that you get from open source development is the superior development model, bar none. And
hmm
the innovation that you've seen coming in the market, whether it's Linux itself or all the things that go around it, or even cloud, that just wouldn't have happened without Linux and open source development. And so that's the reason. I mean, that's a little of the history why, but that's the reason, is because no one, even cloud, where we are today, cloud, hybrid cloud, the ability to come across multiple clouds, that just wouldn't happen out of one company. It couldn't happen out of one company because how proprietary software companies develop their software, they get to tell you when you get your features, they get to tell you when you get your security fixes, they get to tell you that they're not going to put it out in an unselfish way, right?
hmm
And so that's the beauty of the open source model, is the best innovation wins. And so that's what's driven this, is open source and innovation, and it's going to continue to grow at an even faster clip now that open source is so accepted in the enterprise. I mean, not to ramble on, but just one last thing.
hmm
One of the things we thought, we had to educate the market on early on, from 2002 on, when we came out with RHEL, was that Linux was real, it was enterprise ready, it was
hmm
secure, it was all of those things. We don't have to do that anymore. The
hmm
market understands that now. So sorry to ramble on that, but that's how we got here.
No, it's interesting. I mean, I'd say also on a related note, I mean, edge computing is also on a very rapid growth pace these days. It seems to me that 2022 is the year that edge takes a big step toward larger adoption. You've mentioned that edge computing wouldn't realize its full potential without hybrid cloud and open source. Why is this?
Well, I mean, if you really look at what's driving edge is, now that CIOs are getting comfortable with part of their computing environment being outside of the four walls of their data centers. That's what hybrid cloud is. CIOs have to worry about applications that are running within their four walls in their data centers. They have to worry about applications that are running on multiple clouds. They're still responsible for that. Now that they're the technology is getting there, like what we do for and others for hybrid cloud. The technology is getting there. CIOs are getting more comfortable with it. Now there's so many more applications where you can take advantage of just the amount of data that's out there to make decisions on things. But in order to take advantage of that data, you have to have compute very close with it, or vice versa, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So I'll give examples. The telco space, which we're really strong in the telco space, in which we even from the edge, as we're going out to 5G, that's now a software. It used to be hardware software in the 4G and 3G days. Now with
Hmm.
5G, that's all software all the way out to the cell tower.
Hmm.
So the CIOs have to worry about that software, that Linux that's running out there, just as they do the applications that are running in their own data centers or on their cloud. So now that we have both technology and acceptance of that, we're being able to do things that we couldn't do before. I'll give you another example of an application of edge that we deal with.
Hmm.
We have a partner, one of the large car manufacturers out there, that they analyze the paint job coming on the car as it comes off the line.
Hmm.
If you had to wait for all the data to look at that, if you had to wait to ship that all the way back to a data center where compute is to do the analysis on whether it's good or not, and then ship that result back, the car would be long gone down the assembly line. Now I can do that analysis right at the point where the data is, where the compute and data are, and do that application. But nonetheless, the CIO still has to worry about developers developing for applications out there, operators operating it, security being able to secure it, etc.
Hmm. Well, speaking of the cloud, I'd like to get a sense of your sense of the cloud market. I mean, there's so much going on in cloud these days, particularly the rise of multi-cloud, which creates an entirely new level of complexity. I mean, what do you see as a key challenge facing today's cloud customers, and any advice you give to companies?
I think one of the key challenges is that, it's always a good engineering practice to do this anyway, but like with so many options out there now, it's even more important. I think CIOs have to step back and take a look at their entire environment and see what they're trying to do with that entire environment, because you have to make smart choices up front in the design of that environment in order to really have an architecture that you can develop to operate and secure.
Hmm.
So there's some applications that are just going to run on premise forever for various amounts of reasons, whether it's security reasons, data reasons, geographical reasons, political reasons, all of those. There's also another set that are great candidates to go out to a cloud, to one of the clouds, and it may be because those applications take advantage of a service that cloud provider is better at than other cloud providers. It also could be geographical reasons as well. That cloud provider might have a presence more in one part of the world better than another cloud provider, in all of that. So you have to understand that up front in an architecture, in a real design, or else you're going to get yourself in trouble when you're halfway down the path. And so I think one of the biggest things that you have to look at is understand what your application and your architecture for that application design is up front before you start committing to where that application is going to run. And I think now more than ever, that's a really important thing to do.
So
We miss a lot.
in essence, you're saying it's all about planning. You've got to plan things out ahead of time because of the complexity.
Yeah, I mean, early on in the cloud, I won't say any names, but there were many customers that said, I'm going to have 90% of my applications running out in X cloud in the next 5 years. Well, we're
Right.
about 8-9 years down the road from where I first started to hear that. And,
Hmm.
depending on what publication you look at, we're 25, maybe 30% of workloads are in the cloud. And
Right.
I think, and so I think what happened was a lot of companies didn't have experience with moving applications out to the cloud. Once they got in to understand what it really meant to move applications out into any one particular cloud, they got to understand it more. And that's where they started to think, well, maybe this application is not suited for this cloud, or maybe this other cloud is a better place for it, or maybe I don't want to get locked into one cloud.
Hmm.
Because that's the other thing that I don't think there is better understanding now, but there wasn't up front. The clouds are all different. Even
Hmm.
though there's Linux underneath and common technologies like Kubernetes and others underneath, they're all different. They're at different life cycles. They have different things packaged around them. They're just
Hmm.
different. And I don't think that was well understood in the beginning as well.
Hmm. All right, let's look to the future. I mean, if you look to the future of the enterprise AT market, which is so full of competing market forces, a lot of money rushing in, are there a couple trends that you think will shape tech in the years ahead, and how can companies prepare now?
Hybrid is hybrid is the trend, and we're not, we're just in the, baseball analogy, we're about in the third inning, maybe
Hmm.
the second inning of hybrid.
Hmm.
Everything that's getting built now at the, on the infrastructure application side, every company is building for a hybrid environment. And what I mean by that, they're building so that they can run on premise or out in multiple clouds. So that is the trend platform that's going to drive the next 10 plus years of innovation, is
Hmm.
that hybrid platform and architecture. So
Hmm.
everything that's built around that is what the trend's going to be. There's going to be better management for it. There's going to be better security for it. There's going to be better analytics and AI for it. We're going to go out. We're going now out to the edge, but all of those things that I just mentioned are also going to be developed for all the way out to the edge. So the platform is here now, hybrid multi-cloud. And I think the innovation you're going to see over the next 10 years are all the things around it that just make it more automated, smarter with AI,
Hmm.
more services for the application developer that span the hybrid cloud. I mean, today, if you take advantage of a lot of services in one cloud, there's strong services in each of the clouds, but that application is not going to run anywhere else. And if you're happy with that, that's great. But
Hmm.
understanding that up front is really important. And so that those are the things that this platform, this open hybrid cloud platform, is what's going to drive the innovation around it.
So with the focus on hybrid, in a sense, you're not thinking the data center will go away anytime soon.
No.
Maybe that was hyped early on, but the data center is here to stay as you see it.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you believe we're 25, we're 25, 75, 70, 30, whatever it is now, it doesn't matter if it's 50, 50, 50. It doesn't matter if it's 60% in the cloud and 40% on premise. It's still a hybrid environment.
Hmm.
And multi-cloud is absolutely here to stay. I mean, over the last, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, I haven't met one customer that's in a single cloud.
Hmm.
And, and I made a quote the other day that showed up. It was actually pretty accurate in that you don't go to the cloud comes to you. Many
Hmm.
CIOs start to find out this is what we deal with all the time. As CIOs now are dealing with the businesses that they support, having more autonomy and more decisions on what their applications are going to run on and be built on. The CIOs now are finding they may be in one cloud provider they didn't even know they were in. And
Hmm.
so after the business develops the application and they throw it over to the IT department to operate, manage, and secure, they now find out, guess what? I'm now doing business with this other cloud provider that I didn't even know I was doing business with. And so that's what they have to deal with now.
Hmm. Well, it's going to be an interesting sector to follow in the years ahead. Paul, I greatly appreciate you sharing your insight today. Thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure. It was fun.